Pure awareness is not a concept that appears in consciousness, nor is it a happening or an experience that occurs in space and time, nor is it discernible or describable in conceptual terms. This being so, how can one be purely aware if one cannot know what pure awareness is from the point of view of mind? Hello, and welcome to the third and final episode of this series, in which we are exploring together the nature of pure consciousness, and in particular in this episode, the nature of enlightened being. What does it mean to be enlightened? Does it mean that one now has a deeper, more profound understanding of life from a conceptualized point of view? And is there a path or a belief or a practice that leads to enlightened being? Or does enlightened being have nothing to do with either recognizing or expressing ever more subtleties of mind? These questions and more we are about to explore as regards the flowering of pure conscious awareness in humankind. Awakening unto pure awareness is not about accumulating knowledge, which is to amass ever more concepts of mind. Nor does one awaken as a result of holding to pious beliefs, or practicing rituals, or engaging in religious, philosophical, or scientific study, each of which represents a different construct of mind that one identifies with over time. Pure awareness cannot be conceived of mind because awareness is not a concept that arises in mind, but rather is realized when one awakens to the fact that pure awareness is that wherein concepts arise. Awareness is only purely aware, however, prior to egoic identification with concepts of mind when they arise. Similarly, enlightened being is not a concept that arises in mind, but is that which is aware of concepts, absent egoic attachments to concepts, when they arise. Enlightened being is thus being in the present moment, absent the concept of time in play. Jesus pointed this out in the language of his day in this way: "Whosoever shall not receive the kingdom of God as a little child shall not enter therein." Children are not yet waxed strong in the functioning of a mind. They are not yet socially conditioned or highly practiced in identifying with constructs of mind. A child's pureness of consciousness, so to speak, is therefore closer to pure awareness than most adults. As children mature, however, they are frequently encouraged to identify with certain concepts and not others, in order to enculturate them into the society in which they live. This practice, this tradition of encouraging identification with concepts, thoughts, and emotions of mind, rather than establishing an inner environment of non-judgmental openness to the present moment of life, instead establishes an environment of denial, resistance, and avoidance to the possibility of awakening unto pure awareness in the present moment as an adult. Pure awareness, rather than unfolding conceptually through linear time, is unfolded throughout the implicate-explicate order of the universe, everywhere at once, in all moments of time, in connection with every expression that appears in the space-time realm. Constantly, unvaryingly, eternally, never in the past nor in the future, but always here, and always now. Awakening unto pure awareness never occurs in the past or future, but always occurs now, because pure awareness is already present and aware, prior to identification with concepts and thoughts that arise out of fields. The identification process, as it matures, actually tends to put off awakening, so to speak, in favor of identifying with concepts and thoughts by creating the illusion that a separate I entity called me is not fully awake or aware in this life now, but will become awake and aware in the future or in another life hereafter. The egoic practice of identifying with concepts of mind, rather than leading to an awakening or to enlightened being, establishes instead an ongoing predisposition to continue identifying with concepts of mind, rather than to awaken unto the present moment in this life, now. In episode 2 of this series, we noted that concepts are in essence quantum packets of energy containing bits of information, so to speak, that constantly arise out of fields. And the more we identify with concepts of mind, the more we come to believe that, like everything else that appears and disappears in consciousness, we too are nothing more than concepts of mind that appear and disappear in a space-time realm as conceived of mind. Thus is born the illusion of separateness that veils the living truth of what actually is so in the present moment, now. And the illusion of separateness continues to hold sway until a moment of clarity occurs, in which one awakens unto the present moment, an awakening that ultimately reveals there is no such thing as a separate I entity called me, separate from an I entity called you, that exists anywhere in the space-time realm, for all such entities are merely concepts of mind, and nothing more. The process that creates the illusion of separateness can be illustrated conceptually in this way. As concepts arise in the field, if the behavioral practice of egoic attachment is not in play, then the quantum energy of that moment tends to dissipate and fade away, back into the field from whence it came. Thus the quantum energy moment, so to speak, passes through, rather than clinging to the human energy field in which it arose. On the other hand, when the behavioral practice of egoic attachment is in play, then the potential and the energy of that moment, rather than pass through, tends to cling to the human field, which not only strengthens the attachment thereto, but also allows this energy potential to stake out a position, so to speak, in the human field to which it clings. And this new potential that now resides in the field allows for ever more powerful repeated expression from one moment to the next, unless and until it ultimately lets go. And as the tethers strengthen and grow, the concepts to which they are attached amplify the illusion of separateness, together with the illusion of the existence of a separate I entity called me, all the more. The stronger the tethers, the more robust the illusion of separateness will be. The weaker the tethers, the more fragile the illusion of separateness will be. And the more robust the illusion, the more unyielding is the attachment to the false sense of an egoic I entity called me. While the more fragile the illusion, the more likely the possibility that attachments will dissipate, which allows for awakenings to occur, as tethers to the illusion of separateness begin to let go. prior to an awakening, the strength of the egoic sense of a separate I entity makes it seem as though the fabricated egoic me is in charge, and is therefore in some way responsible for the thoughts, feelings, and emotions that arise. In turn, this illusion that a separate I entity is in control makes it seem as though the human experience is my experience, occurring in my body and in my brain, resulting in my fears, my desires, my frustrations, my guilt, my decisions, my anxieties, my hatred, my love, my everything that appears in the human energy field called me, when such is not the case. For all sensations, regardless of their nature, are nothing more than concepts of mind, arising out of fields that belong to no one, least of all to an I entity that doesn't even exist, other than as a fiction of mind. But as one awakens unto the present moment, the strength of the tethers that ties one to the false sense of an egoic I entity called me, which in turn creates a false sense of egoic power and choice, are destabilized, until at some point, in a moment of clarity, they ultimately pass away. Thus ends the illusion of separateness, including the illusion of the existence of a separate I entity called me, as the tentacles that form the false egoic sense of self-identity weaken and pass away. Pure awareness is not the stuff of mind, which is why enlightened sages cannot communicate the reality of pure awareness by means of words, rituals, or beliefs, because all such concepts, regardless of how subtle or sublime, are limited to the realm of mind, which is the realm of space and time. Awakening unto pure awareness does not arise as a concept of mind, but occurs as the truth of pure awareness is unveiled unto those who are prepared, as Jesus put it, not by any belief, effort, or practice, which is the stuff of mind, but by the simple yet profound act of awakening, naturally, effortlessly, spontaneously, like a budding flower opening unto the light of day. Problematically, however, as a consequence of humankind's ongoing fascination with concepts of mind, rather than establishing fertile ground out of which awakenings might occur, instead establishes restrictive mindsets that in effect oppose and resist the possibility of awakening unto pure awareness within. Paradoxically, the high degree of resistance that forms in the human energy field, fueled by addiction to mental constructs of mind, only ends as awakenings unto pure awareness occur. And such awakenings, by their very nature, lead to ever greater clarity that simultaneously ends one's addiction to the illusion of separateness as conceived of mind. Human experience is universal experience, not personal egoic experience, that arises experientially in space and time in the form of concepts of mind. And like a newborn child, prior to identifying with concepts of mind, the initial act of perceiving is in the present moment, absent attachment to concepts of mind. As a child matures, however, perceptions in the present moment give way to identification with concepts of mind, which increasingly draws one's attention away from the present moment toward manifestations that appear. While this process makes it appear as if concepts are separate and divisible per interpretations of mind, no manifestation is in fact ever separate from universal expression as a whole. When Jesus said, "Whosoever shall not receive the kingdom of God as a little child shall not enter therein," he was pointing to this reality, the reality of pure awareness from a child's point of view, absent identification with concepts of mind. The Apostle Paul likewise pointed to this reality when he described pure awareness as the peace of God that passeth all understanding, which in modern terms might read, the peace of pure awareness that is beyond the understanding of mind. For thousands of years, enlightened sages from cultures around the world have pointed to the illusion of separateness, which the ancients called Maya, as the root cause of human suffering. They also point out that the only means by which suffering ends is to awaken unto an awareness that is beyond mind, that is other than the world as conceived of mind. A disciple once asked the Buddha, "Are you a god?" "No," the Buddha replied. "Are you an angel?" "No." "Are you a saint?" "No." "Well, what are you then?" the disciple finally asked. "I am awake." In Christianity, awakening is linked to the idea of salvation, which means to be saved or delivered from bondage or suffering. In Buddhism, awakening means to be liberated from the illusion of Maya, which likewise ends suffering. In Japanese Buddhism, another word for awakening is satori, which means to comprehend or understand one's true nature. In Hindu tradition, the word moksha likewise points to liberation from suffering. In modern spirituality, the term self-realization points to awakening unto that which is beyond mind, which likewise ends suffering. Regardless of the culture or the times in which they arise, the words that point to spiritual awakenings, in essence, point to the same reality, the reality of awakening unto a pure conscious awareness that is other than concepts of mind. The advent and evolution of the human brain allowed for a psychological diversion of attention, if you will, away from the present moment toward manifestations of mind that were newly arising in humankind. This uniquely human experience is metaphorically pointed to in the creation story, when God expels Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden for disobeying his commandment not to eat of the tree of knowledge, a metaphor for humankind's fascination with concepts of mind. And in conjunction with this banishment, God also declared that he would greatly multiply their sorrow, lest they put forth their hand and take also of the tree of life, a metaphor for the presence of pure awareness within which all life appears, moves, and has its being. This same sorrow, the sorrow of humankind, expressed in the extreme in the human experience as hatred and violence, is as dark and as deeply felt today as it was in ancient times. Speaking to humankind's fascination with concepts of mind, Jesus declared that he who finds his life shall lose it, and he that loses his life shall find it. Which begs the question, lose what life, to find what other life? Lose one's fascination with concepts of mind, because such captivation only amplifies the illusion of separateness all the more. On the other hand, to lose one's life as constructed of mind is to find new life, a new understanding of life. And the only way to realize new life, as declared since ancient times, is to awaken unto pure awareness, metaphorically represented by the tree of life in biblical lore, of which God declared, "We must also eat thereof." To lose one's life as conceived of mind, therefore, is to awaken unto new life, as revealed through pure conscious awareness within. For as Jesus also taught, "Behold, the kingdom of God is within you." Speaking to humankind's fascination with concepts of mind, the Buddha declared that awakening unto pure awareness, which he called nirvana, ends suffering. What does the end of suffering mean? Is it the end of worldly loss, as experienced from an egocentric point of view, that loss of possessions or wealth or prestige accrued on the stage of worldly affairs comes to an end? Or is the end of suffering far more profound than the loss of anything one might identify with, acquire, or accumulate over time in the manifested world of space and time? The nature of suffering, as experienced in humankind, is not about loss of possessions, wealth, or prestige, but is the result of long-standing, deep-seated identification with concepts of mind, whatever those concepts might be, which creates the illusion, the false sense that a separate, conceptualized entity, a me as opposed to you, experiences life according to its own volition, its own egoic sense of free will and choice, as if there actually is such a thing as a separate entity that can choose, from an egocentric point of view, how life will unfold. This false notion of egoic free will and choice, which is a construct of mind, rather than bringing about freedom of choice, instead brings about a clenched fist conflict of choice that expresses in the human energy field as denial, resistance, and avoidance to pure conscious awareness in the present moment, now. Succumbing to the illusion of separateness, as nearly all humans do, is the root cause of human suffering everywhere in the world. This is because, as revealed in greater detail in episode 2 of this series, no separate entity exists anywhere in the universe that can, of its own volition, enact an egocentrically contrived plan, regardless of what the plan might be. The notion of a separate entity as doer and creator, separate from the universe as a whole, in all instances, is nothing more than a fiction of mind that is uniquely inherent in the human experience, and as such, is a uniquely human delusion of mind. This human disorder, this delusion of mind that brought about Adam's fall from grace, as the ancient story goes, is today nothing less than an all-out obsession with concepts that arise in consciousness. This addiction, if you will, that stems from a self-centered point of view, gives rise to the fallacy that a separate I entity called me can create and control of its own volition manifestations of mind that arise in universal consciousness as a whole. The consequence of this delusion is that the human psyche is held hostage to the idea that it can try to be this or try not to be that, or choose this or not choose that, instead of just being as we are, in the present moment, absent identification with concepts of mind. Suffering is the sorrow of humankind, the sorrow of fear, anger, anxiety, hatred, and dread, leading to an overall sense of persecution or self-loathing on the one hand, that is countered with a polar opposite sense of personal security, pleasure, tranquility, excitement, or ecstasy, leading to an overall sense of egoic achievement or self-confidence on the other, that in combination account for the emotional highs and lows of the human egoic experience, all of which are predicated on egoic attachments to constructs of mind. This fabricated sense of a separate I entity existing in space and time that conceives and feels the universe within a body-mind organism called me creates a false sense of egoic loss or egoic gain that in turn spawns the sorrow of humankind, the inevitable outcome, as the ancient story foretells, of humankind's psychological fixation on manifestations of mind. This overall world view as conceived of mind, rather than clarifying the living truth of what actually is so, ignores natural, spontaneous perception in the present moment, as perceived, for instance, by a child prior to identification with manifestations of mind. Such is the deeply rooted ignorance of humankind, the consequence of which, as the Buddha pointed out, is human suffering everywhere in the world. Contrary to traditional systems of belief, identifying with manifestations of mind, regardless of how subtle or sublime, does not lead to an awakening. There is no such thing as an awakened concept, or an enlightened construct of mind that one can attain or believe in over time that rectifies this fundamental ignorance of humankind. Profound insight is not required to see that this is so, as humans everywhere in the world continue to engage in the mental habit of seeking, doing, rationalizing, avoiding, attacking, and defending individual and collective egocentric points of view, fueled by attachment to various and sundry constructs of mind, in an ongoing yet futile attempt to either justify or escape from the never-ending chaotic state of human affairs, all to no avail. For no matter what practice or what belief we identify with over time, the sorrow of humankind, the fears, the hatreds, the violence and the wars, does not end. Nor does sorrow end in an imagined life hereafter, for no such life exists other than as a fiction of mind. The only way that sorrow ends, as declared by enlightened sages since ancient times, is to awaken unto a conscious awareness that is beyond all constructs of mind, in this life now, not in an imagined life hereafter. Awakening unto pure awareness is a sudden shift of perception that occurs in the present moment, absent identification with images of mind. Initial awakenings are typically short-lived. Even so, in an instant of present moment awareness, the revelations that occur are deeper and more profound than a lifetime of acquired knowledge can ever convey. Perhaps more significantly, in the aftermath of initial awakenings, the doorway, so to speak, to being in the present moment is made ajar. And as attachment to the world as conceived of mind diminishes, the egoic sense of a separate me that resists the present moment diminishes as well. And as egoic resistance diminishes, the doorway to the present moment opens wider still, allowing for ever greater clarity in pure conscious awareness to shine through, moment by moment, as awakenings and insights continue to occur. Because the egoic sense of a separate me is a conceptualized fiction of mind, there is no journey or path that a conceptualized me can take that leads to awakening. The idea of journey or path is merely a concept of mind, and concepts are powerless to do anything, including embark on a journey to anywhere at all. But as long as attention is focused on concepts of mind, whether they be journeys, practices, rituals, or beliefs, we remain unaware of the one and only source out of which all manifestations appear, which is pure awareness in the present moment now. And awakening unto the present moment requires no journey, nor path, nor any time at all. It only requires that an awakening occurs. When we sleep at night, we do not embark on a journey into sleep. We simply fall asleep. The same is true when we awake. We do not embark on a journey to awake. We simply awake, naturally, effortlessly, spontaneously, when the moment is ripe, like a flower opening unto the light of day. The same is true for awakening unto that which is beyond mind. There is no journey to a place beyond mind. There is only the moment of awakening, which is the present moment now. We do not embark on a journey to awake, we simply awake, out of a dream state of consciousness unto the light of pure awareness, naturally, effortlessly, spontaneously, when the moment is ripe, like fruit falling from a tree, and not before. The notion that a conceptualized egoic me will awaken in the future is a concept of mind appearing in awareness now. The notion of seeking enlightenment from a conceptualized point of view is likewise a concept of mind appearing in awareness now. To seek enlightenment is to look for enlightenment in a future concept of mind, and concepts are not the actual. They are not that which is aware of concepts as they arise in the present moment now. A concept of what awakening might be like is not awakening. It is a concept of mind, and a concept cannot know that which is beyond mind. On the other hand, that which is aware is not a concept of mind, but is aware of concepts as they arise. Pure awareness cannot be sought because it is already here, in the present moment now. The end of seeking occurs when one realizes through a profound shift of perception that the conceptualized egoic me that thinks it must seek is not real. And in that realization, freedom from seeking occurs as one's attachment to the concept of seeking passes away. Seeking enlightenment from the point of view of mind is analogous to searching for a path to absolute reality through a maze of mental constructs of mind. No matter which path one takes, or which concept one follows, or how long or intense the search, as long as one seeks absolute reality in the world of form, one is ignoring the changeless, formless awareness in which the conceptualized search in its entirety appears. Pure awareness is the ground state of consciousness out of which all concepts appear. Concepts are the ever-changing images and thoughts that appear and disappear in changeless, formless awareness. To view life from the standpoint of mind is to view life from the standpoint of concepts alone, whereas to view life as it arises and moves in the present moment is to view life from the standpoint of pure awareness, absent judgment, absent reaction, absent identification with concepts and thoughts as they arise. Awakening under pure awareness is an act of grace, which means it is not triggered by any decision, effort, or struggle engaged in by an imaginary I entity called me. Concepts, in and of themselves, are incapable of doing, creating, or believing in anything that leads to awakening, because awakening is a realization of that which is beyond mind, beyond anything that mind can ever ascertain. Awakening is a spontaneous yet profound realization that pure awareness is not an object of mind. Following such awakenings, concepts, thoughts, and emotions continue to arise, but attachment to these appearances is weaker and less pronounced than before. And as attachments to egoic points of view subside, the light of truth increasingly shines through. And as the light of truth shines through, the illusion of separateness, including the illusion of a separate I entity called me, begins to fade, leaving in its wake pure stillness, pure presence, pure awareness, uncorrupted by egoic attachments to images of mind, even though such images continue to appear. Since awakening unto that which is beyond mind only occurs absent identification with appearances of mind, no practice, belief, or mindset, all of which are rooted in constructs of mind, can bring about an awakening. While meditative practices tend to quiet the mind, which can diminish the sense of a separate me, awakenings only occur in moments of complete disidentification with images of mind, including images of stillness within mind. Awakening unto pure awareness, therefore, is essentially a moment of clarity that accompanies a moment of total disidentification with images of mind. Initial awakenings are generally followed by a sense of liberation from the illusion of an egoic I entity called me, as constructed of mind. But generally, more often than not, the egoic sense of a separate me returns, which invites the possibility of a deeper, more profound realization that the egoic sense of a separate me is a complete fabrication of mind. In the Gospel according to Mark, a description of what the author imagined the initial awakening of Jesus might have been like, which he portrayed in commonly used images of his day, reads as follows. And it came to pass that Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee, and was baptized by John in Jordan. And straightway, coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens opened, and the Spirit, like a dove, descending upon him. And there came a voice from heaven, saying, Thou art my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And immediately the Spirit drove him into the wilderness, and he was there 40 days, tempted of Satan, and the angels ministered unto him. In a similar version, found in the Gospel according to Matthew, it is written that following his initial awakening, Jesus was led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil during that time. The authors of these stories, written decades after Jesus' death, most likely had not realized the living truth of these words in themselves. Nevertheless, in penning their stories, they attempted to portray, as best they could, using the language of their time, an initial awakening, followed by what takes place after such awakenings occur. But regardless of how, when, or by whom these stories were written, they still beg the question, why would Jesus be driven by the Spirit into the wilderness? And what do the words wilderness, Satan, and devil, as portrayed in these stories, actually mean? Metaphorically speaking, the inner meaning of the word wilderness, whether the authors knew it or not, pointed to unresolved egoic attachments to mental constructs of mind that remained active in Jesus following his initial awakening. For subsequent to initial awakenings, one continues to experience moments of inner darkness, if you will, until attachments to manifestations of mind pass away, as ever greater clarity comes into view. Similarly, if we understand that the words Satan and devil point to attachments to manifestations of mind, then we might come to realize that following his initial awakening, unresolved attachments to materializations of mind in the person of Jesus continue to obscure the living truth of what actually is so. Accordingly, even though Jesus, like the Buddha, Lao Tzu, and others of that time, was a highly enlightened human being, in the immediate aftermath of his awakening, absolute clarity had not yet been fully realized within him. Nevertheless, as pure awareness clarified itself, much like the natural purification of water, the true nature of enlightened being increasingly shone through, as egoic attachments to manifestations of mind, one after another in the person of Jesus, passed away. In all instances, including those of highly enlightened beings, in the aftermath of an initial awakening, there remains an amount of dross, one might say, in the form of egoic attachments to concepts of mind that have yet to burn away, requiring periods in the wilderness, metaphorically speaking, for the body-mind organism to purify itself by burning the dross away. And Jesus, despite the myths and legends that arose long after he was crucified regarding the true nature of his being, was no different than any other awakened being, then or now, in this regard. Awakening under the present moment in ancient times was no different than awakening under the present moment today. It can be said, however, that there's a slight difference between awakening and enlightened being, regardless of the times in which they occur. Awakenings occur suddenly, outside the thinking process, absent the illusion of an egoic me in play. But following such awakenings, the sense of a separate egoic me generally returns, albeit in modified form, due to attachments to the world of form that have not yet passed away. Thus, what initially was a present moment awakening is conceptually relegated to a memory of the past, rather than present moment awareness here and now. Whereas enlightened being is being in the present moment, never in the past nor in the future, but always now, absent the illusion of separateness in play. Awakenings only occur in the present moment, but the experience of an awakening is so radical and so new that it seems to occur within the context of an egoic me, which then makes it seem as though the present moment disappears into a concept of the past, as the sense of separateness returns. Unlike awakenings, however, enlightened being is timeless and everlasting, as one stands in the present moment ongoing, absent even a hint of an egoic me in play, because egoic attachments to concepts of mind in such instances have fully passed away. There is nothing mystical or otherworldly about the nature of enlightened being. There is only being, absent ego in play, standing as pure awareness in the presence of the living truth of what actually is so. Enlightened being is pure being, prior to the arising of concepts and thoughts, absent identification with the world as conceived of mind. Following an initial awakening, however, having not yet gone through a purification process, while in the wilderness, so to speak, egoic attachments remain until greater clarity regarding the illusion of separateness eventually brings down the final curtain of the last act in which the role of an egoic I entity called me passes away. In the context of present-day evolutionary developments of egoic mind, if we only were to consider the nature of enlightened being in the extreme, we might say that one is either asleep and thereby lost in the egoic illusion of mind, thus expressing as unenlightened being, ignorant of the presence of pure awareness now, or one is awake and thereby free of egoic attachments to the illusion of mind, thus expressing as enlightened being, standing alert and attentive in the presence of pure awareness now. People today, however, generally speaking, live betwixt and between the two extremes, albeit absent the actual experience of awakening. They thus live life and experience life as if walking along the seashore with one foot in the water and one foot in the sand, reveling in moments of inspirations and insights that are soon clouded over by delusions of egoic power and egoic control that continue to hold sway, as deep-seated attachments to manifestations of mind remain strong, having not yet passed away. For enlightened beingness in the present moment to be in play, the sense of duality, including the egoic sense of a separate me, must collapse in its entirety. And following such a collapse, a genuine realization that the underlying living truth of human experience is pure conscious awareness, prior to the illusion of a separate me taking hold, is from that moment on forevermore in play. For those who experience awakenings, however, as ever deeper non-conceptual realizations occur, an ever more profound sense of liberation likewise occurs. But throughout this ongoing purification of the body-mind organism, the few vestiges of egoic attachments to mental constructs of mind that inevitably remain sometimes become ensnared in an ongoing search for the ultimate state of enlightenment as conceived of mind. Such a state is unattainable, however, because enlightened being is not a state of mind, but is the presence of pure awareness, absent attachment to any state of mind, including an enlightened state of mind.
Enlightened being is not about attaining the perfect concept of mind or the perfect state of mind, nor is it about freedom from human experience, but is about non-attachment to human experiences as they arise. Enlightened being does not identify with any state of mind or any experience, regardless of what that state or experience might be, including the so-called state of enlightened being. Instead, it just allows the present moment to be as it is, whatever that is might be.
Freedom from the sense of separateness is not the presence of nothingness, but is freedom from attachment to concepts as they arise in the present moment now. Enlightened being does not deny, resist, or avoid concepts when they arise, but rather does not identify with concepts as they arise, including the concept of enlightened being as conceived of mind. Awakening under this fact, deeply and unconditionally, is the end of egoic seeking, and the end of egoic seeking brings an end to sorrow as well. Instead of sorrow, peace, joy, and love now express through enlightened being, absent identification to all that arises in consciousness, including every concept, every thought, every emotion, every experience, and every state of mind. From the perspective of enlightened being,
the experience and the experiencer are no longer viewed as separate, but are seen as one and the same. Thus, concepts of an experience do not accumulate over time, but instead pass through, absent conflict, absent reaction, absent an egoic point of view, because the illusion of duality, along with the illusion of a separate self, is no longer there. Pure awareness stands as enlightened being prior to the arising of concepts, thoughts, and emotions, which upon arising are experienced directly in the present moment as they arise, absent the delusion of an egoic I entity in play. Pure awareness stands as enlightened being when there is a clear realization that no separate I entity exists that chooses which concept, thought, or emotion will appear, or which to cling to, or which to deny or avoid. Being in the present moment is the end of egoic resistance, the end of conflict, the end of fear, the end of anger, the end of anxiety, the end of guilt, the end of depression, the end of hatred, the end of violence, and the end of seeking to overcome same. Thus, as the Buddha so declared, is the end of suffering in humankind. To be ignorant of these facts is to ignore the presence of pure awareness that observes the world of form in the present moment, now. On the other hand, to be purely aware is to realize that I am not a form or an object in space or time, but am that which is aware of all forms in the present moment as they arise.
One is purely aware when one realizes I am not the story, nor do I create the story, but I am that which is aware of the story as it unfolds. Clarity regarding this fact is the key, because it not only ends egoic attachment to manifestations of mind, but also ends the illusion of separateness, which is the sorrow of humankind.
That which is prior to consciousness, even prior to being, is the source of all concepts and experiences that arise in consciousness. Concepts and experiences, as conceived of mind, represent the known, while the source of concepts and experiences remains forever unknown. Through a process of enculturation from childhood to an adult, we are taught to live primarily in reference to the known. So the question remains, as enculturated adults, can we now learn to live absent identification with the known, and thereby be with the unknown? As per Hamlet's soliloquy, to be or not to be, such is the eternal question for all humankind. Being is the ground state of consciousness out of which all appearances occur. And enlightened being is aware of this fact. Absent being, there is no appearance, yet the source of all appearances remains, eternally present and purely aware, patiently waiting for the next appearance to occur. Thus, the underlying nature of who we truly are is prior to appearances, prior to experiences, even prior to being. Absent identification with concepts of mind, We are that which is purely aware and nothing more. Appearances come and go, but the presence that witnesses the coming and going remains unmoved. Recognition of this fact is the key that opens the door to enlightened being, in this life now, not in a conceptualized life hereafter. The witness, which is observing the present moment, is the last remnant of a sense of separateness that in highly enlightened sages ultimately dies, leaving nothing but pure awareness, observing the world of form, absent attachment to all concepts of mind entirely. When the body-mind organism is no longer identified with manifestations of mind, then love reigns supreme. When pure love is in play, there is nothing one needs to know. There is only pure being, expressing through human form the living truth of what actually is so. No pointer, no teaching, no practice ever leads to love. Love simply is when the ego is no more. In the final hours of his life, it is written that Jesus declared this to his disciples: "A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you." So also other enlightened sages have pointed to love as the way of enlightened being. To be present as pure awareness is to live life as enlightened being, never in the past nor in the future, but always now. The realization of this truth not only ends suffering, but also allows love to express into the world, freely, naturally, spontaneously, absent judgment, absent resistance, absent avoidance to the living truth of what actually is so.